The problem with Mario Kart World is Super Mario Odyssey. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with the roster. The Mario Kart team decided to add a bunch of generic Mario characters because Cow Truck, which, yeah, sure. The outfits you can unlock, however, aren't generic Mario, they're just generic. Aviator, Mechanic, Pirate, Swimwear. This isn't inherently bad, but it's a good starting example for the disconnect in the design. For characters, it's not a fish, it's Fishbone. It's not a bee, it's Stingbee. It's not a... On the flip side, it's not Captain Toad, it's Explorer. It's not Spooky Speedster from Mario Galaxy, it's Pro Racer. Mario Kart 8 had Tanuki Mario and Metal Mario. But here we have a list of real-world outfits that they mapped onto whoever felt appropriate? Mario on one hand, real world on the other. Then we move to vehicles. We got a Lakitu Cloud, we got Little Dumpy, a good mix of both worlds. Same goes for the stickers. Sorta. There are stickers with intentional design, based on tracks, items, and so on. There's also a bunch of random brands and logos where the developers have mapped real-world businesses onto whoever felt appropriate to flood the reward pool. The requirements to unlock all of this stuff also have this split. The track stickers unlock upon racing in the special cup. It's weird they aren't tied to their own cups, but it's still intentional. There's a goal to work towards and a related prize. Some of the free roam stuff also has related stickers. The generic stickers, is that a Captain Toad sticker, are for things like driving a lot and collecting coins. Coins. My 10,000 coins prize was a red spiny sticker. 5,000 tricks? Bus. The characters are unlocked by beating cups that show you which ones you've beaten. The outfits are random from sucking down food, with no way to check which food you've already tried. And pizza gives you Burger Toad. Sure. There's no way to check pretty much anything, in fact. Double Dash had a records menu for Grand Prix and time trials. Mario Kart 8 had time trial histograms, and at least had counters for coins collected and distance travelled. Mario Kart World really drops the ball here, though they've been wishy-washy on this stuff for a while. In Double Dash we had live rankings, elapsed time, and a speedometer. With higher resolutions, the minimap essentially incorporated the rankings, but time and speed seem relevant to a racing game. We have a coin counter in races because they increase your speed, but it's not exactly clear just how much speed you get from having more. Maybe a speedometer that shows how your max speed changes would help clear up what coins actually do. Super Circuit didn't have a limit on coins, and part of how your rank was determined was by how many coins you collected. And oh hey, it tracked your times too. I'm sure saying coins a lot, but speaking of best times, time trials? It shows your lap time during the race, but not for the last lap? And also doesn't show them afterwards? Lap times are really useful for practice. They did bring back some stuff from previous games, like the feather. It makes you jump. I'll get into this more later, but adding vertical mobility is a good idea for an open world game. But for a racing game, like Mario Kart, you now have to consider everywhere it could be used for a shortcut, and then you have to place out of bounds areas everywhere, which is incredibly unsatisfying. Enter Knockout Tour, their big idea for shifting a racing game into this open world they've built. They want you to take it all in while you drive. They don't want you to learn and grind, they want you to travel and grind. You're in a giant theme park, and the Mario Kart roller coasters are now just part of the show. You aren't just a racer, you're a tourist. If you're travelling through a vast and diverse world, you can't leave out the local food that's unique to each place. Unique to each place. Coins.
I think you'll agree, if you go to, a foreign land, one of the things that makes the biggest impression on you is the currency. And since, Mario is going around to all these different kingdoms in this game, we wanted to make sure that there was a currency for each one.
Super Mario Odyssey took Mario on an adventure to a bunch of non-mushroom kingdoms. The first big trailer highlighted a real frog, a real dinosaur, and New Donk City with real humans. The kingdoms are big open spaces, each with their own real-world costumes. Oh look, an explorer outfit. The trailer dropped in January 2017, and Mario Kart World prototyping started 2 months later, with the project officially commencing at the end of the year. The end of the year is also when Odyssey released. 2 years later, Mario Kart Tour was released, which doubled down on real locations. New Donk City? Nah, just straight up New York. Now, I haven't played Mario Kart Tour, and I never will. For all I know, it's a good game. That said, I have played a lot of Mario Kart 8, and there's clearly design differences between the two, given one of them is for phones. There's awkward jumps and corners that don't really fit 8's gameplay, and the way the track guides you to the correct route is so... I don't even know how to describe it. Out of place? Giant holographic arrows and road pieces that look like they were jammed in and clipped through the ground. What is this? Why did they do this? Well, because you play Tour on a small phone screen, they have to make it much more obvious where to go so you can see it, which makes sense for Tour. This new version of Calamari Desert is essentially a port of the Tour version. Versions. There are 2 Calamari Deserts in Tour. One that follows the original route from Mario Kart 64, and one that takes you through the train tunnel. The 8 version is the original for Lap 1, and the alternate route for Laps 2 and 3. This is how Tour tracks were adapted for 8. If there were multiple routes in Tour, they were combined as the laps of the track. And if we go back to our timeline, we can put Mario Kart 8 on there, along with Deluxe, of which every DLC track is adapted from Tour. That's why they look the way they do. Deluxe adapted Peach Gardens from Mario Kart Tour, which was based on a track from Mario Kart DS. They made parts of it wider. Wider roads through the Slalom Garden, resulting in less rows of hedges. The branching hedge paths are now a piranha plant with lots of room around it. And on the last lap, you go backwards and just fly over the slalom. Clearly Tour and Deluxe influenced World, but how much did World influence Deluxe? Did they decide the DLC should be all Tour tracks to bridge the design differences between 8 and World? The wider tracks are good for variety, of course, as long as there's still something else going on to keep your attention. Toad's Turnpike and Rainbow Road from Mario Kart 64 were remade for the original Mario Kart 8 release, and they're bigger, but still keep the spirit of the track. Honestly, the old Rainbow Road is kind of boring because of all of the long empty straights. I'm sure that won't come up again. The Deluxe DLC tracks weren't built for 8, they were adapted from Tour. But they worked because despite the tourism aspect, they were still focused on being racetracks. Mario Kart World was being developed alongside Tour, and eventually the Deluxe DLC, while also being forced into an open world setting, while also trying to distinguish itself from 8 by adding planes and boats. Exhibit A, Peach Beach. Returning from Double Dash, the first lap of Peach Beach basically matches the original, minus the pipe you could get items from. Then lap 2 starts and now you're going uphill, away from the beach. Side note, it's also really steep. They didn't just make tracks wider, they made them taller, and without the benefit of designing around anti-gravity, the track takes up more of your view because you have to go back down. But anyway, they made this whole castle town market area thing, and as a tourist in their world, they want you to see it. And it is pretty neat. There's obstacles, there's a couple corners, and you can get up high on the rooftops. Then lap 3 is why the track is so tall. You can either fly your way down in a straight line, or just fall for a while, and then boat in a straight line. Okay, that's not fair. There's one corner. I appreciate the attempt to incorporate different physics for each mode of transport, but boats just feel like permanent ice physics, and planes sometimes have forced acceleration and also sometimes a forced direction and also sometimes a forced ejection for some reason. But then you have Exhibit B, Koopa Troopa Beach. It's just a flat circle. You go around in a circle 5 times. This track is fine as is, though I wish the music loop was a bit longer, but of all the remade tracks to leave alone, why this one? And they made it the opening track of Shell Cup, so it's the only one you race multiple laps on. They have this whole ocean to fill, but given everything they did with the other remade tracks, this one, Airship Fortress, the best track ever made, only gets 1 lap. And the rest of the race is spent on the preceding routes, driving in a straight line. When going from point A to point B, we try placing lots of bends along the way like we always do. But with too many bends, you lose sight of your destination. Then your goal of travelling from point A to point B becomes more difficult. The routes between circuits are the natural end result of tourism track design that isn't built around a city. They have this big open world they need to fill, they're not bound by needing to circle back to the start line, and they don't want your next destination obstructed. The result is that they're wide, straight, empty. They'd already been making tracks wider, but now they're thinking about travelling instead of racing. They want to create spectacles and photo ops. But then they make them racetracks anyway? This is wild. The extra elements feel tacked on, and items are way less dangerous. Oh no, a bomb! Anyway. Oh no, a boomerang! Anyway. Can't even pretend to be scared at this one. At least you get plenty of mushrooms to get through it faster. It feels like they wanted to move away from traditional circuits because you're looking at the same thing each lap, when a tourist should be making the most of their time, sampling as much local food as possible, and then hitting the highway for some more sightseeing. Oh my god, it's so empty and wide. And what happens when you decide that these routes should be connecting every adjacent pair of circuits? You end up with a lot of empty space. There's no point in having an open world if there's nothing to do in it. Ooh, helicopter. And the fact that you can fast travel anywhere from the moment you start the game says a lot about how important these open areas actually are. They only exist to accommodate the routes, which only exist to show off the landmarks they made, which only exist to make you feel like a tourist. For example, we thought it would be good if, from Mario Bros. Circuit, you could keep driving down a wide road like Route 66. The scenery would gradually thin out, while up ahead you'd see a landmark that resembles Monument Valley, and the road would ultimately connect to a big city. In Double Dash, the vast ocean beside Peach Beach was scenery. You can't just plop that into an open world, because now you need to put stuff in it, in case players go and explore. There might be a medallion out there. Why is all of this empty space even here? Why make it an open world at all? The main menu has all of the gameplay options, with a free roam prompt that almost looks like an afterthought. Why not keep the tracks as individual areas and let players pick one to free roam in? Some of Odyssey's kingdoms remind me of Super Smash Bros. In Brawl's Subspace Emissary, a lot of the locations are just generic, real-world locations. In Melee's Adventure Mode, the Mushroom Kingdom stage doesn't look very Mushroom Kingdom-y, at least not compared to something like 3D Land in Ultimate. Odyssey's kingdoms were supposed to feel foreign and new because they weren't the Mushroom Kingdom. Mario Kart World doesn't feel like the Mushroom Kingdom. It feels like a Mario theme park in some other kingdom. It genuinely seems like they started from open world and then worked backward until it resembled Mario Kart. Oh, what's this quote? We wanted to take the series to the next level. So, we decided to drop the numbering this time and go with a completely new title, Mario Kart World. So we'd already added Mario Kart World to the concept art from the early stages of development. We've talked about the Mario, and we've talked about the kart, so now let's talk about the world. Naturally, there's a bunch of collectibles to find to encourage exploration. We've got medallions, panels, and coins. What's the difference? No idea. Some medallions are in hard-to-reach locations. Others are just sitting on the ground. Some panels are in interesting positions that require tricking and wall rides. Others are just sitting on the ground. Some coin stacks are hidden in corners and along rooftops. Others are just sitting on the ground. Sometimes they're all just together in the same spot. There's a room in Starview Peak that has a medallion floating in the middle, a panel around the back, and a pipe that takes you to a coin stack and another panel. I guess the difference is you know how many panels there are, you know how many medallions you have, and coins are whatever. I don't even know why I'm picking these again. This isn't inherently bad, but it's indicative of a lack of intentional design, and this is an issue I have with a lot of open world games. I don't want collectibles that I can just stumble onto. I want to drive around and explore and notice something, then figure out what I need to do from there. There's a panel hiding behind a curtain in Boo Cinema that has a trail of coins leading towards the wall. There isn't a trail on the other side, despite everything else being symmetrical. It's quite simple, and you could just see the panel by accident, but there's something to notice and something to figure out. Coin trail, wall ride. In Drybone's Burnout, there's a medallion visible high in the air. If you're looking for collectibles, your immediate reaction is, how do I get that? Which prompts you to explore. I followed the track backwards until I found a rail that leads higher, then jumped my way over to the medallion. Not only have I figured out how to get up here, I've also learnt a new path through the circuit for races. This is peak open world stuff, and, credit where it's due, P-switch missions involve going to places you normally wouldn't, or repeating actions you wouldn't often perform. But when you go back to racing after completing a mission in free roam, you'll realise, hey, I know another route here, and feel like you've improved a bit. And this is what I mean about vertical mobility being good for open world games. The third dimension gives you more space and more freedom when exploring. But unlike in Odyssey where you can just But unlike in Odyssey where you can just wahoo your way up a wall, the world design needs to be more deliberate when you're grounded in a cart, especially when feathers and plane thingies aren't always nearby. The world isn't just empty, it's full of cliffs and other tall barriers that serve to keep you on the route when racing or travelling. When you're exploring, it just adds tedium. I have a bunch of empty space on my map where stuff could be hiding, but I'm not going to go back and look because navigating it all isn't fun. I spent more time exploring the circuits not just because they were more dense with stuff to do, but because the verticality is accounted for in the design. You can follow the track to a high point, and you'll need to, since the minimap gives you nothing to work with. There isn't even a north marker. It also spoils the exploration for you. Oh, there's a panel there? Cool, thanks. Even the big map is more of a menu than a map. You can't set waypoints for navigation, you can't add markers for collectibles or points of interest you want to come back to, the roads are hard to see, the circuits are impossible to see. It's essentially outsourcing the work to whomstever ends up writing a guide, and that's really disappointing, especially since they had the entire development cycle to consider this stuff. I don't want to look up a guide, I want to experience the game as the developers present it. At least the roads have signs that help you figure out where you're going. Well, at least I can learn some history about the world while jamming to these sweet tunes. Mario Kart World has what they call a jukebox system, also known as a radio player with one station. You can't make playlists, you can't set favourites, there's no track list at all, they just play at random. Let me infinitely loop Sky High Sunday please and thank you. Update 1.4 came out while I was making this, and they added the name of the current track to the pause menu. So, that's something. Alright, no more delaying. It's time. Mario Kart DS introduced Mission Mode, a series of challenges that repurpose tracks for a gameplay twist. I adore Mission Mode. It has its problems, but it brought extra variety to a genre that should be trying weird and creative new things. It's an arcade racer, a party game. It doesn't need realism, it needs to lean into the wackiness of literally slipping on a banana peel. There were missions where you had to race through gates, missions where you take out enemies with items, missions where you have to drive backwards, and boss fights. This concept could be fleshed out so much more, there is so much to work with. And yet it hasn't been seen since. No, you don't count, go away. But then someone decided that a way to make the giant empty world a little less empty was to add P-switch missions. In Mario Kart DS, there were 6 levels, each with 8 missions and a boss, totaling 54 missions. This structure allowed them to ensure a variety of missions in each level, a sense of progression from increasing difficulty, and rankings for player performance. It benefited from that structure and offered a reason to replay it. In Mario Kart World, there are hundreds of missions that can be found and completed in any order. They also keep your speed and items when you start them, making quite a few missions trivial, even completely breaking some. A lot of the switches are off-road, making speed items really useful, but they remove your items if you retry, so you gotta go find an item box if you want to try again. You also have to go hit the switch and sit through the intro again. I beat 200 and decided I was done. The difficulty was all over the place, the effort put into them was all over the place, and the exact same missions were repeated all over the place. Here's some coins in a circle. Here's some coins in a circle. Here's a bunch of coins in a circle. Here's some coins in a circle on a rail. Why make these into missions? Why not just have, I don't know, themed coins to collect for each track? This halfpipe jump could have just been a medallion. Anyway, dodge the moose? Sure. Dodge the skaters? I guess I can just go around, so okay. There are so many missions where you don't have to think about it. There's no danger, it's a parade to show off the stuff they put in the game. When enemies take too long to notice you and attack, or they're set up on cycles synchronized to you starting from a standstill, you end up with missions where they never actually get in the way. What's the point of this? Why are these Goombas even here? Oh boy, that was close. This mission actually has a lot of enemies, but you can just, you know, skip them all. If this geyser is mistimed, don't worry, just skip the rest. I don't know why I'm playing them at all, to be honest. In fact, half the fun of the DS missions was that they repurposed the tracks in interesting ways. This is just some random cliff, but it stood out to the devs enough that they used it twice. What's my point here? Well, Tour had actual missions, but now it's an open world, so the medallions, the panels, the stacks, the missions, they're all just whatever random thing someone came up with to fill in the big open world, because they decided on it being a big open world before thinking about what would be in it. At least in Odyssey they just made them all moons and then gave you a reason to collect them, with boss fights giving more moons to distinguish them. For all of the pointless moons in Odyssey that felt like padding, there were also some that were fun, and the same goes for the missions. The street races around different areas of the map were great, and I loved that some of them were tributes to older tracks with their respective music. It really made it feel like an event. Infiltrating Shy Guy Bazaar was neat, and there were some other cool parkour missions like in Crown City. There were missions where you did have to consider the enemies, there were missions where they just threw some weird stuff at you, and... hang on. My favourite mission was racing DK Spaceport in reverse with all the extra obstacles. These were fun, but exploring isn't. So whatever fun missions I've missed are staying that way. It's not worth the time considering what other ones I might find instead. In Odyssey you could also buy moons, because they tracked how many coins you had. We discussed the idea of using coins to buy clothes from clothing stores.
So we wanted, coins to be used as coins in this game, actually use them as money.
But that would have meant stopping at stores to shop, which would have disrupted the flow, given that this is a world where you can keep driving. So instead of progressing through missions or stopping to buy things in a structured manner that give you a clear target and direction, you get swamped in unrelated filler content and rewards that either are or feel random. Disconnected. Why did they fall back to Mario Kart 8's system when this was something Odyssey did right? It also needs to be fun to figure out more obscure stuff. It took me forever to unlock Rocky Wrench, because I had no way of knowing Kamek would only summon certain characters on certain tracks, and you only get one lap on Airship Fortress in a Grand Prix. See also, Mirror Mode, which I didn't even know was in this game when I started making this video. Secrets and surprises are fine, but they can benefit from gentle guidance so that players don't assume they've done everything and never find them. Making an open world game where players will be expecting that they'll need to explore is already doing some of that work for you. To meet that expectation with vast emptiness is a missed opportunity, to say the least. Mirror Mode is a fun gimmick because of how your track knowledge and muscle memory can work against you. For a lot of this world, what does mirroring it even do? When I close my eyes and picture open world Mario Kart, I see Royal Raceway in Mario Kart 64. You can turn off the course and follow a road to Peach's Castle from Super Mario 64. This is where the trophy ceremony takes place after a Grand Prix. I remember as a kid, I drove straight at those doors wondering if there'd be more inside. But alas. Mario Kart World kinda implements this idea in Mario Circuit. Each section has a road you detour through, and now you're at a new section. Imagine if each of these 3 classic tracks had been their own full track, with the not huge and empty roads that join them used for Grand Prix and Knockout. Instead of picking a game mode, you pick your character and vehicle, and then you load into free roam. The game mode menu then becomes individual menus at each track. You drive up to a Toad or a Koopa, and they say, "Hey, interested in competing?" There's a practice mode where other racers do laps like in the street races, and you can follow them to learn the track. There's collectibles scattered around the track that require following different paths, finding shortcuts, exploring the surroundings. Each track can have its larger structure, but use that space for stuff like the street races and battle arenas. Instead of having huge empty spaces between tracks, have groupings of tracks. It could be by environment, putting tracks like Choco Mountain and Dandelion Depths together. Imagine one giant Bowser's Castle with a bunch of tracks from previous games weaving through each other, or Wario Stadium with Wario Colosseum's giant sphere suspended in the middle, with one of these jumps being the jump from the track. You could also group it by cup. Have a Mushroom Cup zone with all 4 tracks near each other, then have a bit more distance between the other cup zones. Once you've raced every track in a zone, the character you unlock for beating it shows up and challenges you to the Grand Prix, which could then include the roads in between. If you win, you unlock the character, you unlock missions, and you unlock fast travel. Knockout Tour could still include routes between zones, but then stages could also be actual laps of tracks. And if you could add markers to the map, why not go a step further and let players use them as checkpoints for custom tracks or for setting their friends a parkour challenge? The tracks themselves also need to be smaller in some places. Long straights with nothing to do shouldn't be so common. The reason you often see finish lines on straights is because they serve as a breather before diving into the next lap. But so much more can be done with tracks to add variety. Bring back 200cc for one. The track's not being designed for it is what made it fun, and all of World's wide corners and outer paths would actually get some use, because right now you just take the inside line. Mirror mode is neat, but how about an actual reverse mode where you race the other way, like in Tour? A lot of these tracks are already designed to accommodate that thanks to Knockout Tour, and some have interesting variations. Shy Guy Bazaar has a completely different circuit you can only play by picking one of 2 specific routes. And as you can see from my tier list, those routes aren't particularly enjoyable. What about tracks that transform to become more difficult or complex, like Grumble Volcano, but you have to work your way up to them? I think a lot about this intro to Mario Circuit in Mario Kart 8. What if tracks started flat and you had to earn higher tier licenses to take on more dangerous races? What if there were smaller tracks and these transformations turned them into one big track? One mission was a desert rally. What if it was a circuit covered by a sandstorm? What about a rainstorm flooding tracks to add or change paths? What about a rainstorm of items? Oh, that's cool. All of these track variants and extra modes offer a way to earn ranks and unlock things. Bring back time and coin counts for Grand Prix, keep records of personal bests, and have challenges like win without using items, or rivals only get shells and can't hurt themselves, or time trial but you have to end with 20 coins, or you have to take out a certain number of enemies. Like in Tour, give players an ID card or license for when they play online, and let them highlight the stickers they've won from challenges, their favourite statistics like coins collected, their highest Grand Prix and time trial ranks, all of that stuff. Like in Tour, they brought custom items back, but what about a draft where teams pick which items they can get? And let teams be unbalanced. I want to take on 23 computers and only get green shells while they only get mushrooms. Add custom point distributions, so you can use something that makes sense. Seriously, what is this? Or give second the most points. You can pick any route in Versus mode. Why can't I pick my own knockout route? Give Versus mode a playlist setting, where you can pick all tracks in advance as a knockout. And why can't I do knockout on circuits? 24 players, 6 laps, Baby Park. Add weird vehicles. Let people get creative with how they tackle different tracks. Have a kart that's faster but slows down on boost pads. Have a bike that jumps higher. Have an ATV that can hold 3 items. Give each class of vehicle its own records, its own rooms online, and let players decide how restrictive they want the rules to be. And finally, there is so much inspiration to draw from for characters and outfits. You can have Aviator Mario and Tanuki Mario. There's 200 kinds of Cheep Cheep. Don't look at me like that. Captain Toad was in Mario Kart Tour. By starting from open world and not Mario Kart, they got a little too real. There's potential here, and from what I can tell there was a lot of good in Tour. But they couldn't make up their mind about what should be Mario Kart and what should be Odyssey. They made 2 categories of stuff from Mario Kart Tour, what to keep and what to leave behind. Then someone accidentally swapped the labels and now here we are. Instead of combining the best of racing and the best of exploring, they were so set on tourism that they compromised on both. We believe that Mario Kart World marks the dawn of a new generation for the series, so we hope you'll give it a try. If there's one thing you take from this video, it's that they need to add the Electrodrome Piranha as an outfit. But seriously folks, what's the one thing you can point to? A single design choice that encapsulates this new generation. The credits. You're not a racer. You're a tourist. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go grind some time trials. Wait, can I even see behind me?